3D printing is changing fast, and for anyone but enthusiasts, the options have been use pre-supported models or use bad auto supports and hope. But a new wave of software is hitting the market that promises to change all of that. And best of all, it's available right now for free. So, do they work? If they do, how do they stack up against professional pre-supported models? And if auto supports are available for free and accessible to anyone, how's that going to affect your 3D printing experience? In this video, I answer all those questions, as well as talking to some professionals from Mammoth Factory.
Okay, this is the answer I would give, okay? The answer I would give is
to get some expert advice. So hi, I'm James, and this is Rising 8 Minis. If you've ever tried to 3D print a complicated model, you'll have run into supports, and you'll know that adding supports manually can be daunting. It's tricky, time consuming, and let's be honest, frustrating, particularly when you're just starting out. Auto supports have been a feature for major slicer software for a while now. The big question is, do they work? Yes, but of course it's not that simple. So we're going to run through some tests. Let's get a few basics sorted first. You need supports for overhangs or complex shapes. If you don't support these areas, you get islands of materials which will either distort or be left behind on the printer, or the print will fail completely. There are 3 pieces of software I'm going to use, and I'm going to support, slice and print the same model in all of them. That software is Lychee, Chitubox, and, perhaps controversially, Blueprint. Before I go on with the rest of the video, I just want to talk about Blueprint because it is a little bit controversial. Blueprint is a new piece of software designed by the team at Heygears to automate the supporting of objects. In theory, to make designing and producing models easier for more people. All good so far. Where the controversy comes in is because the process is very locked down. Think bespoke file formats, no ability to adjust settings, and most controversially, no ability to use the software at all without being logged into it. In my previous reviews, I completely missed this as an issue, and I'm still not sure I agree it's a deal breaker, but credit where it's due, once in a 6-side spotting this and flagged this up, and lots of people agree with him. To the point where Heygears have announced that coming in November, a new feature will be announced in the software which will allow people to circumnavigate somehow. Which is great, and when that happens, I'll let you know. The cool thing here though is despite all those lock-ins, I've found a way to use Blueprint's incredible supports to support any model and print them in any software. There's nothing mystical here, just download Blueprint and then drop the unsupported model you want to support into it and click auto support. At that point, just export as an STL and then you can slice it in whatever software you like. Lychee's supported file looked like this and printed like this. Chituboxes look like this and printed like this, and Blueprint looked like this and printed like this. Mind blown. Why does any of that matter though? In an ideal world, I would click a button and a finished model would pop out. Then I can just get on with simply painting it, which is what I really love to do. That's not the reality though, so anything I can do to get a step closer to that dream, the better. If like me you also dream of becoming a better painter or just love cool models, you're going to want to sign up to my newsletter. The link is below, and anyone who does will get an incredible free STL courtesy of Mammoth Factory. Because the fastest way I've found to get better at painting is to get professional help, and in the newsletter you'll get access to my in-person painting workshops early. And trust me, you're going to need early access because my next class with Marco Frassoni in February is sold out before it even made it on sale. Sign up using the link below. Now the supports in Lychee and Chitubox are great, but the supports in Blueprint are incredible. They just work really nicely and the models peel off buttery smooth. Oh my goodness, it works. At this point I started to get a bit carried away. Have I just made hundreds of file supporters redundant? Have I just saved Mammoth Factory thousands of pounds every month? Oh my goodness, this is going to turn the sector upside down. This is huge. Not so fast, because the next question is, so how do auto-supported files stack up against the best pre-supported ones? Honestly, pretty well. But the big difference here is that professionally made, pre-supported files are made by professionals, which is obvious. Let me explain. Auto supports are done by a computer, essentially guessing where the weight of the model is, and so supports are sometimes placed in strange places. Now you can edit those supports, but only if you know what you're doing. And my guess is that if you're using auto supports, like me, you don't. When a professional human though supports a model, they're placing supports only where they need to be. How do they know? Well, because they're professionals. They've spent hundreds of hours working it out and often have years of experience in making files that work every time. To put it another way, they aren't guessing. In my experience, most of the time auto supports work fine, but when things start to go wrong is when you don't have access to the best kit, or when you're working in less than ideal conditions. I have a £1,500 state-of-the-art 3D printer that calibrates its settings and constantly monitors temperatures and peel forces. And I was sent it for free, because I run a YouTube channel. That's hardly a normal experience, is it? Most people are printing on much cheaper machines, and I know when I started on a 2K Creality Halo 1. And when it got cold in winter, I just ramped up the exposure to make sure the prints worked. Hardly professional, is it? I feel that that's a more normal use case though, and that's who pre-supported files are designed for. Take Mammoth Factory. They've got a new campaign started on My Mini Factory, and it's called Void Stalkers. In that campaign you'll have access to a load of insanely original models, and each and every one will come in an unsupported, a pre-supported, and as a Lychee file. Unsupported is to let pros and those using fancy printers auto-support the files themselves or support the files themselves. Pre-supported files are for those who just want to drag and drop and print, and Lychee files are for those who want to tinker with the supports. I'll pop a link to the campaign below because Mammoth Factory have supported me this month with a boatload of free minis to give away on my Patreon, so do go and check them out if it's your jam. The important point here is that pre-supported files have to exist, because even if you make the best auto-supports in Blueprint and then export them as an STL file, you'll lose the ability to tweak the settings. So you can still end up with various files failing as they fail to detect supports or miss details. Think of it like this: if I write a Word document and then take a screenshot of that Word document, I can still read the document, but I can no longer edit it because now it's just a picture. And that's essentially what an STL is. It's taking a snapshot of a 3D model and then sending it off your file. At that point, everything's locked in and you can no longer tweak it. What that means is that professional pre-supports are still superior to auto-supports. In my tests, in my specific environment, every single auto-support file that I printed on my GK2 on my Heygears worked. And on the Mars 2 Pro my friend did, I had 99% of the model print perfectly with just a couple of little imperfections. And to me, that's good enough, but for you it might be different. So I can't 100% say, go and use auto supports, they'll work perfectly every time. And that's the problem, and that's why companies have to provide pre-supported miniatures rather than just using the auto support function and having away with it, basically. I will say that when I was importing into Lychee, it was incredibly crashy, and I couldn't do anything other than just slice it. I couldn't even repair the file, because every time I did, the software just crashed. That said though, I still printed good models from files I exported from Lychee. Compare that to when I printed the pre-supported models, and actually I found that I still had to warm up the supports in order to get them off easily, because if I didn't do that, they were just too hard and too rigid, and I ended up snapping bits of the models. As long as I took the extra care and steps to remove those pre-supports though, they printed perfectly every time. So that begs the final question. How does all of this affect you? Well, if you're the sort of person who buys STLs via Kickstarters or My Mini Factory Tribes or Patreons, the likelihood is you'll already have access to pre-supported files. And if you have access to pre-supported files, frankly you should use them. And this video will make zero difference to your life. If you already know what you're doing with supports, then this will be a handy bonus feature for you. Use the auto support feature to do 90% of the work for you, and then simply look around the model using your experience to guide you, and then remove the supports you need to, and clean things up where you need to. If, however, you're a complete beginner, and only have access to cheap or free models, or maybe older models with bad supports, then auto supports can be a game changer. Sure, you may still get the occasional fail, but probably you're already getting those, and now you can access an easy way to support your miniatures that are close to professionals, which removes yet another barrier to 3D printing. And in my mind, that's a great thing. I will add one major caveat though, because while I always also support my models, you can't just hit one button just yet. Well, sometimes you can, but it doesn't always work properly. Left to their own devices, even the latest and greatest software cannot recognise which faces of the models are the important ones, and so you end up with situations like this. You can see the pock marks all over his face as the model's been faced into the supports, as opposed to being faced onto his back, which would have made more sense. So in order to auto-support correctly, you still need to orientate the model well first. That means lining it up, and I typically follow Fohammer and other creators' advice by aligning the model at between 30 and 45 degrees, with the faces facing upwards that are the most important. Once you've done that, then you can hit support. All the software I've tested today comes with those features built into the software, even in the free version, so you shouldn't have any issue doing this, but I just wanted to give you a heads up first. And as a final thing to think about, I asked Mammoth Factory what they thought the implications of auto supports would be on the industry This is what they said.
Okay, this is the answer I would give, okay? The answer I would give is people buy based on trust. This is all about trust, right? So people buy pre-supported from companies like us because we not only make the supports and we know what we're talking about, but also because we test print it. So there is this safety in numbers and in expertise, right? So if a company like us would move to something like this, would save a lot of money, but we still test print and make it safe for everybody, right?
In the final few seconds of the video, I want to show you the minis I printed. Some are pre-supported files, some are auto-supported files, and honestly, I'm not sure I can tell the difference between the two. But I'll leave that to you to make the decision. For myself, I don't have any qualms about using auto-supported miniatures, but I'll probably use the two interchangeably. As always, if you've enjoyed this video, let me know in the comments below. And if you want to access some of the incredible miniatures I've talked about in this video, you can do so via my Patreon, which costs just £3 a month and is linked down below. If you do that, you'll have access to hundreds of STL files, as well as laser cutting files and D&D adventures too. Or you can check out Mammoth Factory, which is also linked to the top of the comments. I have some really cool videos in the pipeline, so make sure you subscribe to that. But all that's left to say now is a huge thank you to everyone who supports me on Patreon. You know who you are, and I'll see you next time.